we'll call this an informal conversation for the moment. I'm glad it's being recorded, and if we achieve a quorum, we'll call the meeting to order. I do see that we have the RGB folks with us, so let's see, Dave Mason, and I think I see Andrew too. So appreciate you all joining us, and I guess could let you guys take it away right quick if we, like I said, if we call the meeting to order, we'll worry about the business then. So
okay. So what we'll do, we have a quorum over here, so we're all right.
Excellent.
Right? So we'll go through this, and we consider this all these meetings a draft up until the final anyway. So this will be just another draft. We're going to talk back and forth, and any feedback we get from everyone will be good feedback, so that'll make the final even better. So what Andrew will go over is how we refine some of the designs. We get some more imaging, and then we started our cost-based analysis, identifying, and we tried to put everything up on the same level. And I'll explain that when we get to that sheet, how we're doing apples to apples. We took the 4 options and we made them 3 options, because really option 1 and 4 from the last time is really option 1. So we collectively, if you do nothing, what does that mean? And what does it mean long-term? And what does it mean short-term? So we looked at all those items, and then we did a pros and cons, and we do a cost-benefit analysis if you do one versus the other. We'll get into that in the last couple of slides. So we'll go in these few slides relatively fast, just to bring everyone up to speed of where we were last time, and then we'll drill down when we get to the last few slides. Does that sound okay? Okay. Andrew, take it away.
So maybe we could, actually, Mason's driving, so I'm gonna let Mason be the guy who share it with you.
Okay.
Can everyone see this first color sheet? Can't see it. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, show my screen.
Okay. How about now?
Better?
I can see it.
You can see it. Okay. Huh. Can you try and
I don't see it. Hang on.
Jim, can you see it?
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, I exited full screen. Now I can see it.
Oh, all right, sure. So just recap, we could go through these fairly quick, but this was the last time we met. We put together this series of images and describing the options, and then Mason and Jeffrey did a couple more. We were talking about transitions of existing to what new spaces created could look like. So Council on Aging, Youth and Recreation, and the proposed use for the former high school. Those are, I'll let it keep going. So we looked at the highlights of the community sort of conversation, what things should be considered. Again, recapping this, it really hasn't changed from last time, but I know like Jim didn't get a chance to see it. We keep going. We looked at the high school layout, how it's currently used, or how it could per floor level, what its potential uses could be. We had option 1, which was really not doing anything specific to it, but we wanted to look at its cost sort of pushed out from 0 to 5 years, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, and 15 to 30. So that started the conversation about what the cost use of the relative buildings are that you currently have, right? So we have the Council on Aging, we have the town hall, we have the town hall annex, along with the high school. So
I can stop you there, Andrew. The reason why we did this, gentlemen and ladies, is because like a broader picture of this thing is that realistically, when you compare something that's going to take you 30 years to pay for versus something that you can get away with 1 year, in 30 years, you're still going to do maintenance to those items. If you did nothing, you're still going to have it. So it's to bring everything up to that same even keel. And we can look apples to apples in the best interest of the town, both now and in long term.
So that first option was adaptive reuse, keeping the entire high school, say complex, the facility, how it could be broken out or retrofitted. That was option 2. And then discussion about breaking or removing significant sections of the building and giving it more of a campus condition, where we did town hall and annex as a complex, a school addition, and youth services and athletics. And then we had council on aging, potentially farmers market, and even the auditorium reconfigured, and some fairly expensive site work that makes it more interesting, engaging between those 2 or 3 components. So yeah, again, these are just diagrams. This is a space of what's being used now in the high school, and then if what spaces are not being used, existing conditions. And then, well, we call it option 1. Previously, we called this option 4, which was kind of the, if we didn't do anything to any of the other buildings, but we wanted to take the town hall annex and add it to the town hall, what would that look like? Or what would that conceptually look like programmatically, not specifically what it physically looks like, but maintaining the town hall, moving the town hall annex in this program and inhabitants, and adding it on to the town hall. So that was the old option 4. It's now kind of conjoined into the first option. So this was, again, option 2, taking the whole footprint of the building and looking to find programmatic use benefit. These were the areas that could be adapted or developed.
Again, this is primarily put together this way for a public meeting, so we would break it down, and obviously we take more time.
Yeah.
But we do it graphically this way, so if a person doesn't understand how to read a 2D plan, they would certainly see an axonometric and understand.
So again, exterior spaces, how the site might be used more effectively or as it is. Some alterations to the circulation and the flow around the building now.
And added parking.
Parking. And a little sports, what do they call it, concession / restroom area in the back, which you don't have now. Okay, so this was just a breakdown on the square footage between the existing square footage, what new square footage could be added or been captured. And then, so the net difference between the different programs within the high school.
You can go back one, I just want to say one thing on that one. We added a couple things on this slide with the last 2.
Yeah.
Auditorium, performing arts, and then exterior hardscape. Right now, there's none exist. You could argue that they use the high school. You could argue that there's space in the existing, although it isn't code compliant, and if they wanted to use it, they turn some things on and whatnot. So we added those as new square footage.
Yeah.
To bring your net up of new space.
Existing. And then if it works, just an option of what it might turn into, what might work.
Yeah, these are some of the options. Again, people generally see this a lot clearer than they can see a floor plan. So these options show different configurations on how you can aesthetically change the existing building to provide similar newer spaces inside that building and opening it up.
I think we have quite a few of these, but
Yeah.
in many ways, it's one and the same. The back of the school, new playground, new outdoor space adjacent to, I think it was the farmer's market. So this was the campus, the concept between take the building and split it into sections. Again, a layout of the program, giving each program sort of an identity or an address, and then what it might look like. This again has quite a bit more exterior access and to each building itself. Now they come 3 individual buildings or 4 really, how you come and go, ADA access, level change in the topography. So starting to look at that.
And also add some elements, right? If you can go back there for a
Yeah.
second. You add some elements from the other one. This, you can actually see where the building's been chopped up and taken off for that reason. And what we've done is we've switched those to hardscape areas.
Yeah.
Areas in which the town hall could be closed, but the after-school event could be open. Or you'd have weekend events and whatnot. So it brings the community into that environment. As Andrew alluded before, with the concession stand, now you're bringing this existing school and you're using the fields that are around you. You're bringing that type of activity back to that school, back to that area. So in theory, you could have a baseball game going on at the same time as your parents are playing some pickleball across the way.
Yeah, and there's also the farmer's market, there's the rows of tables, and then the after school or sort of not a segregated, but a separated play space for young kids or after school programs. So it really does become more of a campus, and then it can have a life beyond just a 9 to 5. And there's even potential for after school or an evening programs that would be considered into the school section of that purple. And a breakdown of the square footage between, so this option of what it would afford. Yeah, no, sorry, nothing good. So,
But these are very similar, right?
yeah, in many ways, it's gonna be, this changes somewhat because we added on and cut through that little garden space. Night access. The space between what would be the new town hall, the town hall annex, and then say council on aging. You have potential for athletic space between there. Council on aging, or for that matter, any after school or after the building was shut down, like the theater, the amphitheater, good Lord, auditorium and the kitchen and the space between the two could be used as well as a place for gathering community events. Council on Aging wanted a, exercise space, which is separate from their quiet study / library or coffee time space. And there's ample opportunity for that.
If I could just go back to that for a second. Last week, we went 2 weeks ago, we went into a little bit more detail. And Jim, I don't know if you were there for that presentation, but we took the actual interior photos of the school and we modernized it. We took that wall out, which isn't a bearing wall, and made it a curtain wall, bring some natural light in there.
Yeah.
We've modified the ceilings. This is an SAT grade, just like it's in there. It's just a different material. Obviously, there's new floors, whatnot, lights. But take that existing space and really modernize it, which is current trend that's going on for all these buildings that have been left in behind with all these new schools happening.
Right. These are images, not just make believe, like they're modeled images from within the space that you have. So not too deep, but enough that we can take something down, you put something back. How do you open it up and give it a more modern, up-to-date look? All right. The back of the school, the potential to have an outdoor farmer's market, indoor and outdoor garden, depending on how it can be used. The existing classroom, how it might be set up. Again, that last one was sort of the idea that you could take the classroom and turn it into, it can be a bazaar, it could be, indoor, like winter gardening sales, so that farmers markets are not just located outside and out in the cold, and that you could have something that continues through the winter time as well. as a community space. This was the, Mason, I'm not letting him talk at all, but right now you use the sports fields out back, they're occupied, have a reason to be there, but no place to go to the bathroom other than porta johns, and there's no like shelter space or concession space. Again, it doesn't have to be this, but the idea of it, that you provide that.
Last week went into the pros and cons of each one that we looked at. And this is kind of shopping, but these are pros and cons that can be added and subtracted. So if any people, person on the committee feels that we missed something, then you can always add something we can put in. And these are intentionally to be talking points of how these would generate either good things or bad things, whatever option the town wishes to go with. Next slide. Okay, so now the cost benefit analysis, we'll look at this. And again, what we did is to put everything on a level playing field. Like I can't look at a bond for 30 years and put that against renovating an existing town hall for 1 year. For obvious reasons, the numbers will come in very different. So we looked at all the options up to 30 years. And as Andrew alluded to before, we incrementally broke them out in 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 30 years. So in a building, and I'll pick on the town hall because I just said that first, but on a town hall building like it is, you can predict what's going to happen 0 to 5. Potentially you can predict 5 to 10. You don't know what's going to happen 15 to 30 years out. You can only assume things like the roof has to get done. The windows will probably get done. The HVAC will get done. You'll have septic issues in 30 years. 30 years is a long time, but 30 years is based on a bond. So it's a cost you're going to spend on a bond. What's the cost you're going to spend on the other elements? Look at it now and then. So I would say the big difference is both options 1 and 2 are costs along the way. So that includes inflation. And that's why you see number 2 being the most expensive, because all those changes and added functions and modifications are all done over a 30-year period, where things are obviously more expensive than they say they were 30 years ago. 30 years ago, I was doing construction for $85 a foot, and now it's $800, so it's 10 times in 30 years. Hopefully it's not 10 times in 30 years from now, but it's going to be something up there. And we looked at that. So those are important to look at, because when we do the cost benefit analysis, like you see in front of you, these are some of the pros or the good things that we see that comes out of that. So we're going to come back to the slide in a second. We're going to drill down to those estimates. We can explain further. So unlike, does that show the whole estimate?
No, that's
just the
this,
town.
we broke them into each building, because we can't, it's too big to
Too
show
big.
them all. Yeah.
So what we did is we did full estimates of hypothetical scenarios of this town hall, the town hall annex, and the existing high school. And then the third option would be the community type high school. So we've got full estimates these time. Last time what we submitted and presented were just bullets of higher profile categories. And I know some people got confused where those numbers didn't add up. So we thought back and said, let's get rid of that scenario, because when this thing goes public, no one's going to understand that. So we're still on the fence. We have these are drafts, but we have the actual larger estimates, and these are major bullets that'll get us there. Something very similar. So in this scenario, which is the town hall, you can kind of see what we're projecting is first year 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and then the last one
10 to 20.
you know, like 20 years out of this.
It should have been 30. but
Should have been 30, right? So it should be 30, it says 20, we'll modify that. So we put everything up to 30 million, 30 years rather. And then that brings it up to, let's say 18,
10
10 million, 10 and change. That's just a town hall. We can go to the next slide.
annex, town hall.
That's
annex.
just the annex, okay. This is the town hall. Town hall's 9.2 million. Again, if you look at cost 0 to 1, it's relatively inexpensive. The costs really exceed and go up higher when they go to that higher year.
And some of these vary a little bit because we know, like I spoke to Sean Leach. I reached out to Sean and Manny both because their facilities, they understood what recent money has been put into the buildings, and then also what, and working with the information that Jim, you provided us in terms of the costs for maintenance and custodial and all that. So we looked into those numbers to try and fold them back into this. So we tried to keep them all consistent, but not all of them are the same. In other words, like you don't need a new well here, but you need a well there, or immediate needs. So that's why we tried to push it out over the next series of years. That makes.
I would say in most cases, septics usually last 30 years. So you'd almost need to replace your septics on all these different scenarios, and that drives some of that cost up.
But like at the annex, it could be 3 months to less than a year. I've heard a number of times. So, you know, that was a variable. We pushed it to an expenditure that's more needed more quickly. So,
Next slide. Next one is a council on aging.
Just going back, taking one step back, so I don't know if it makes any difference. I understand what you're trying to do with the cost, and it's like it works, but the HVAC at the town hall is being replaced this year. So that'll be
right.
brand new as of January.
Okay. And I remember, Jim, you said that you had a grant for windows, right?
We don't have a grant for window. We have a grant for the HVAC and some insulation, nothing for the windows.
Not for the windows.
And they do need to be replaced.
They're gonna put a central plan in there for your air conditioning.
We're gonna do the heat pumps.
So they have ventilation units on the roof. Is heat pump?
No, nothing on the roof. We'll have I guess a splitter in the attic that'll feed the second floor, and we'll have individual units in the offices down first floor.
But no natural ventilation. It's just because heat pumps just give you heat and air. They don't ventilate.
Right now, there's enough natural ventilation going through the windows.
Yeah, but we understand that, yes. But long term,
Long term,
you just get tighter.
Yeah, and that was a window replacement number that, you know, to evaluate exact number and size would get narrowed down. But
Okay, so let's stick on the town hall.
Yeah.
What do we have for HVAC? We already plug a number in there for that?
360.
Upgrades.
Yeah, just up there.
360 or years 5 to 10.
Right.
So your heat pump may last 15, 20 years. So maybe we just put that number
yeah,
on.
just bump it over one more. Not a big deal, just.
Yeah. But it's there, okay? So let's go to we'll go to the next slide. Next slide talks about council on aging.
Yeah.
And if you want to go into the details of the different.
Well, we knew that they had some HVAC upgrades. They could do a bit more. Envelope, we just decided, you know, like siding and the shakes and shingles, push that out, but it's still something that should be done. We know the parking lot's been patched and sealed. And again, these things are serviceable now, but looking out the next 5 years, what would need to be done? Electric service, we know it's there, but it's aged. So we just basically, again, carried a well replacement out 5 to 10 years, not knowing exactly how old that is now. And then domestic water upgrades, plumbing and piping. I know the building, you know, based on its age, the infrastructure there is older, but there have been some plumbing like ADA bathroom upgrades and some fixture replacement, but not a total gut rehab type of thing. And it's difficult because it's used. So that was really when we based pushing money out another 5 to 10 years. That'll definitely be something we want to look at or be carrying money for. Interior improvements. There's ADA ramp off of one side. Access on the wet or planned north side works, but the one into the basement is questionable in terms of how you would get to it, or if it's even used at all, because when we were there, they're storing paper and products on it. Like, I don't think it's actually used. So we just pushed that out again as well. next 5 to 10 years. If they were gonna stay there, they would have to do some improvements there. And so that's really how we came up with that number.
Okay, next one, that's Council on Aging. This is the old high school. Now, this is pretty tricky because, the question was, we understand the seniors are in there now. So the question came up is, what do we have to do to make it code compliant now?
Right.
So I would say if you do absolutely nothing and let them, I don't think they're in there on a day like today because there's no air conditioning. So it's one thing you'd have to do. But code, as far as bringing out to what I call, in all the other briefs I put together with what I called and determined as habitable space. So it's an addition to code compliance, it's habitable. In other words, it has air conditioning, which is not a code compliant or compliancy item, but it's a habitable space that we live in an environment where, like the last couple of days, you've had heat waves. If you're going to move all the seniors into that space, it has to be, habitable type space. So, and the windows that exist now are what they call hopper windows. You can't put air conditioning units in those windows. So we looked at short term, and you have to deal with the entire building. So the building code won't allow you just to do, well, they're only going to be in 5,000 square feet. So we're changing the use of the building. So we only have to do 5,000 square feet. Code looks at that as an assembly space. It was an educational space. If it is an assembly space of 155,000, 99.9% chance you're going to need a suppression system in the building. Now, whether or not you go for a variance, whether or not a variance is accepted, they'll allow it. Fire variances are very difficult to get. So the worst case scenario, we're assuming you don't get a variance. And what is the cost of that? When you look further down, you go into windows above life safety. So life safety brings you down to about 17 million because you have to address the entire building.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If the Council on Aging only put educational activities in there, that would be consistent with the current use, right?
Now, an educational system according to the building code is a school. It's not, I turn my office into an educational office. I can get away with that. Because that'd be done all the time. So it's a little twist of it. They look at it as senior center as a business use.
Even if it's educating seniors.
They all are.
Yeah.
All senior centers educate seniors.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a skew. Here's the danger part for the town. If something were to happen inside there, when someone gets hurt, the town would then be liable for that kind of stuff. So you have to look at that. Now, what's the liability of that? Whatever they could do. Right now, as it exists, there's no doors that stop anyone that's entering the senior center or the Council on Aging to go to the other side of the building. There could be more hazards on the other side of the building. There's nothing stopping. And the way the egress is set up in that school, it's meant for a larger space. So you'd have to look at how you petition that so that, number one, the people on the Council on Aging don't go to these other transient spaces. And if you can just control that one area.
Compartmentalized.
Yeah. And some things like the fire alarm, the fire code doesn't look at just an area, they look at the entire building. So now you gotta make the entire building fire alarm. So you do open up Pandora's box when you do let them in there. Fortunately, nothing's happened. Unfortunately, something could happen. We have people in there that are risk and they could always come back. There's a ton of civil attorneys out there that would sue in a heartbeat, saying that you should have known it, should have done something about it. There's liability. So it's kind of our job to let you know what that is, and it exists out there.
Is it,
Go ahead.
I'm way over my skis here. Can one condominiumize the building so each section can be treated separately?
So when you condo a building, say if you had a big industrial building and you condo it out to different tenants, you still got to address the overall fire rating. You compartmentalize that building, so you break it into different halves. So say one building would have to be separated by 2 hours from the other side of the building. You could do that in a way where I think they would still go after you with a fire alarm. You'd have to go for a variance because it's still one building, one water system, one sewer system.
Mixed use.
So as much as you argue that it could be 2 different buildings, they're gonna come back and they're gonna argue, but it is one building. So their position, or the building code's position is, we can't force everyone to immediately retroactively change their buildings to a new code when we come up with a new code. The only enforcement we have is when you do renovations to that building, we can enforce you have to meet that new code. So you, by doing that, you're triggering that element from coming out. Now, I'm not saying you can't put a good argument together and get some of the stuff with a variance, with other provisions, you trade. I'm not saying that at all, but that would have to be another analysis where you look at that and say, what's the cost benefit analysis if I stop putting 2-hour rated walls everywhere versus a suppression system in a certain area? We'd have to look at that separately.
Could I ask a question as well?
Sure.
So I know I'm probably getting ahead of your presentation, but you're talking about fire suppression systems, et cetera. What, when you do the scenario of just putting an addition onto the town hall, I know that we talked about that at the last meeting, that by just, closing the annex and putting an addition onto the town hall as being one of the alternatives. Did that include a complete sprinkling of the existing town hall as well, bringing the existing building up to code? When you did the cost of that?
I looked that up. I don't believe it did. I think in that case, when you're building a new addition, you can separate those two structures.
Oh, okay, all right.
In
So
theory,
that does not include any upgrade for the existing town hall.
right. So if you look at it this way, Cindy, if you put an addition on that town hall and you made it a separate structure and you rated the two corridors between it, either with rated doors or rated wall, in theory, if the existing town hall burnt down, in theory, the other building should remain standing up.
Okay, I got you, okay. I just really wanted to know whether or not that was included or not. Okay, so it wasn't. Okay, I get it. I get it.
That's why,
Understood.
Ed had brought up the scenario with the existing high school. Could you do something? They're going to say, well, if there's a fire hot enough to burn steel and melt steel, it's going to transition. Let's say you had a fire on the other side of the Council on Aging, and that fire burned so hot that it hit the structure. The structure's going to collapse on the other side of the Council on Aging because it's connected. So you got to have redundant. So any kind of addition you do to the building where you don't require the existing building to be brought up to code, you have to have two separate buildings. So in theory, one burns and crashes down and doesn't affect the other one. Sometimes you'll see that on the news. You'll see a fire of condo units, and one condo's completely burned and the other one's not touched. That's why they do that. So they can control that firewall.
So on that point with
Gotcha.
the town hall, right? I'm not sure if this is included in comparison, but if we're gonna do apples to apples, to building a new facility up there in Main Road or adding on to the town hall, we would have to include the rehabilitation of the existing town hall as well, in order to have a fair comparison, so.
Yeah, if it fell in those 30-year repair window, then you would put that in there.
Well, I'm just looking at the cost, right? You're looking at a new municipal complex up at the old high school, and that would essentially be a brand new facility, a new municipal office. So if we're gonna compare the two, I think we just need to put a dollar amount, not only to build the additions of town hall, but to rehab the existing town hall facility.
Okay. Yeah. We have didn't carry.
No, but it doesn't carry a sprinkler, but just part of
Well,
it.
like Jim says, you're gonna renovate one, you should renovate the other one. So it's a cost of renovating the town hall on there, even on small and minor renovations along the years. For 30 years,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do some renovations to the town hall.
And
Right.
and one of the things I think you've touched on, but
Yeah.
as part of your final report, I think it's important to address what we can use the building for now and what triggers additional code upgrades. I'm looking at it right now. We have a code analysis done from, code analysis company that says if we change the use, if we spend any money up there, if we do anything else, we need to upgrade the building for earthquake standards, fire protection, ADA accessibility, and so forth. If we can do things without doing that, I think we need to know. And if we can't do things without doing that, we need to make sure that's part of your report, because right now there's a feeling, strong feeling amongst the community that they don't understand why we just haven't moved our offices up there yet, and why council aging hasn't moved in yet, so.
Point taken.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do is, we'll do a slide on,
Any use other than education, school, it's gonna change. Then it becomes mixed use, mixed occupancy.
yeah, but I think what Jim is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, what you're asking is what triggers it? What triggers that?
Oh, how much?
Because if he's saying, why don't you just move your office in the existing high school? And unless you show them what triggers that code and what potentially that costs, I mean, that's easy enough.
What, a code breakdown?
Yeah, that's easy enough. We can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll give that job to Jason and Taylor St. Cloud going in and out. You can't, what you can't do. We've got one of our guys, one of our principals is like a code expert, so he can also tell you what you can do to minimize the impact of the code as well.
And you touched upon it in the slideshow, but I think it's important to really point out the costs that it's costing us now for the current uses we have and the limited uses that we have in the building. You showed on your plans, and I think we're occupying about 21,000 square feet, but the majority of the building is not being occupied. So we're spending whatever, $250,000, $300,000 a year to occupy a very small portion of the building. Essentially, we're just using the gym, right? The after-school program's a couple hours a day. It's 100 kids. It's probably 2 classrooms, maybe 3. You know, it's
The plan that we show how it's used and what's not used, we could put a dollar amount of what that's the space is used, and it costs $360 a year just to keep that.
Yeah, sure, okay. And then we can actually use the same diagram for that, so you can understand the area. Okay.
Put it on the
You
same.
get that, Mason?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the existing spatial analysis, and I know it's just conceptual with the couple of options that you have moving up to the old high school. But what we're actually using now for town hall, council on aging, recreation, what they're using, what their needs are in the after school program. Is that consistent with what you're showing in the building? I know it's not gonna be perfect, but I just want to make sure we're close. Like I just noticed that the recreation in the new building shows the gym. It shows almost that whole addition there to the south side of the building for recreational use. I don't see them using that whole thing unless it is, becomes a community complex.
That was the diagram we had before where I said, you scope creep and you're occupying the whole thing.
Yeah.
Cut it back. That was cut back, right? Those we just needed the diagram, yeah.
But-
So you want to go back to that and quickly show Jim to make sure he's on board with that, or we need to modify a little bit? That was the black, remember the black, you shaded
Run
the black.
It's the option where it's that. The option 2. Yeah. Yeah, we gave them more space.
Right. And we go up there and rental. I think what Jim is saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, what you're saying is, there's a degree difference in that top diagram between brown and black. So black.
Yeah, now I'm just looking at the recreational use, right? You get quite a bit of that building set aside for recreational use. Is that needed? Is that, we have the gym downstairs, a small gym. Is that a council on aging facility, or is that overall recreation?
Oh,
I guess in general, I just want to make sure that the uses are consistent with the needs, right? Like you're showing, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably a dozen classrooms, 10, 12 classrooms for the after school program.
Yeah.
Is that the anticipated need? They're currently not using that much.
That came from a conversation with, what's her name? Jennifer, who runs the after school program.
I think they have 100 kids there now, right? So that's.
Yeah, and she said she had a waiting list of another 150 or 200 that she could support, but no space to do it in. So,
Well, they have the space there now, so
yeah, I think
I'm not sure why she hasn't. Anyway, I just want to make sure that the uses that you've allocated here is consistent with the need. And then even with that, you're still looking at 26,000 square feet of rentable office space in night school. More than that, 30,000 square feet of space that really hasn't been allocated. So
yeah, that's the one that's used now. So this was taking the whole building.
Yeah,
So we need to show what areas are not going to be used based on the current capacity. And what effect does that space have?
The current capacity is the other one that we use now.
Right, because you inherit all that extra space.
We
in
do,
the basement.
That
Yeah, that's
what's
there.
being used now.
So Jim, take a look at this slide in the middle.
yep,
That's what we know. All the gray is the unused or unoccupied.
so,
So just to reiterate again, this is feedback, so I just want to hear correctly.
no,
Well,
I
you've got
just wanted to
the,
point out, I think that's an important slide right there.
Okay.
well, what about the administrative space? You don't show that as occupied.
It's just that one little office.
It's that little office.
Oh, that's how little it is.
I
Okay,
think there's 2, maybe 3 people in there.
okay.
Yeah, and I think they use some of the, what the hell, the drive up the garage space, but other than that,
Yeah. Loading.
yeah, living area, but. Right.
Okay. So we'll spend a little bit more time on this one, maybe elaborate on why that's, why is it we're taking. I mean, that was kind of the catalyst for option 3. Because we saw this abundance of unused space that you would have to, in theory, heat at least. Maybe you wouldn't have to air condition it, but you definitely would have to heat it.
So just looking cost benefit analysis, right? It's always difficult with municipal uses because we don't always look at that.
So if we can go back
Back
to
to those, yeah.
If we could, Jim, I'd like to just finish the slide.
Sure, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. We'll finish the estimate. So we all see that, and then we'll go back to that slide. And I'm going to talk briefly about, because it amazed us when we did them independently, and then we had our in-house estimaters doing them independently, not knowing the bigger picture. We wanted it that way because we wanted to know the real numbers. And then we would kind of, go to the last, and then we were looking at, geez, why are they skewed so much? Why are they different? And it wasn't until we understood why, which was interesting, it was because of that 30-year slope. So when you do a bond for a building, you get the money day one, and you're able to build it day one and take ownership and beneficial ownership rather of all those spaces immediately. Where if you wait 30 years to do something, not only does the price escalate, but it's also the unknown, and that drives the cost up, which skewed that option 2 right through the roof of option 3, which totally blew me away because I didn't expect that to happen. So that shows you when you wait and do things as it goes, it may immediately cost less. The long term, again, 30-year, when you look at a 30-year bond, it costs more. And that's what that should show there. So we were on the slide last.
That was the
High
last.
school, size of high school.
Yeah.
Do you have the new one?
Oh, no, you mean broken out for the,
Yeah, didn't.
no. You mean the one of a campus?
Yeah.
We didn't do that.
That one.
The
didn't have
cost
all this?
use, no.
We gotta do all of that. I want them all.
We have the
apples to
cost
apples.
use baseline,
Yeah,
but not.
so it's, well, I want them all equal, so they're gonna compare. Let's go back to this slide you're on right now, cost benefit analysis. So if you look at option 3, 60, was that 68?
Yeah.
68 million, 81 million, 33 million. Now, some of the benefit of a $33 million scenario 1, obviously it's less than half, maybe right around half of option 3, but it stagnates where you're going. It doesn't look at potential growth of the town, development of the town, and resources around the town that can be used. Where the community campus integrates the town and the public a lot better. It also opens up to other programs that we don't even know about yet that could come out of that building, of that facility that you build, that's inherent in that building of that facility. That could either be revenue generating areas, or it could be more nonprofits, or like Andrew had mentioned before, an EMS or something that's beneficial to the town that we haven't even recognized yet, but you have the infrastructure and you built it. Similar to scenario 2 or option 2, where now you've got this massive building of 155,000 square feet, of which you're not occupying a better part of that, as Jim just alluded to. But that doesn't prohibit you from developing that in the future. But we don't know what that is. So we looked at the building as you're gonna need minimally, you're gonna need windows, time period, you're gonna need a roof overall, HVAC repair overall. The HVAC you're gonna have is gonna have to be segmented for the different things. So a day like today, you're not paying air conditioning for the whole building if no one's in it after 4 o'clock and only one area is occupied. So I think they all play something different. So if you want to take a couple of minutes and read these bullets, I'd like some feedback on this stuff and feedback overall on what we came up with. So we still, and I know this is going to sound biased, but it isn't, but I look at what the taxpayer is going to look at. And what's the taxpayer is going to understand is the most cost efficient benefit long-term on a 30-year growth pattern of the town or trajectory growth pattern of the town. In option 3 benefits kids, adults without kids, adults with kids, and seniors. So all the population really gets beneficial use of that space. Where option 1 pretty much only utilizes some of those citizen population. So if that goes out to a bond vote, it's highly likely that you'll have the people that don't have any dog in the race go against it because they just don't want their taxes going up. Scenario number 2, where adaptive reuse, it's a long period of time. It's 81 million, not at once. It's over 30 years, $81 million. So it's a long period of time. So that's an easier pill to swallow, but it's a constant unknown on your balance sheet every year from a building that the town owns. So that may be greater or less. Whereas option number 3 is a pretty much a static number that you work on less. And as revenue becomes greater, just like your house mortgage, the payment on that debt becomes less and less over that 30-year period. So we look at this and we say the most benefit that we see for the bang for your buck, so to speak, would be that option 3 long term. But that's our position.
Yeah.
We're just here putting the stuff together. I'm sure you guys will have some things that we didn't include on this. And that's why we wanted to toss it back to you tonight.
So I do have another point, and I have to admit I'm flying blind here. I'm going through a lot of this by memory because I'm on a phone for reasons because I'm traveling. But anyway, I remember all the different scenarios. But the cost of doing nothing, I think, is also a very important hammer to bring home. And that is, there will be people out there that say, just sell the property and let's just be done with it. And therefore, then we roll into the other scenarios about, status quo, keeping the council on aging, keeping the town hall as it is. That important component of the fields, I think, has to be addressed, and the cost of either knocking that building down in order for the land to be sold, or how little the land is worth to try to sell it with the building on it, if in fact that's true. But the cost of losing those fields, I think, is something that people really have to understand, that there is a very big cost associated if we lose that piece of property. And it's not just because we have to renovate some other buildings, but we have fields to replace and we may have to knock down the existing building. I think that that's an important cost for people to understand.
Couldn't the buildings be sold and carved out of the playing fields?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
Well, okay, so I mean, is there a value attached to that? I mean, do you think, do you have some scenario at some minimum value that you think that you would place on that?
Yeah, so Cindy, like you said, the whole piece of property, as I'm sure, more valuable than just the site where the building sits. And could it be, I'm sure it could legally be separated.
You have to have access.
Yeah, and sack and
Fire department's gonna record 20 feet around the perimeter of the building.
Right.
For access to the building. You're gonna bring
But But if we were to sell just that building and we
Yeah.
were able to carve out, the parking lot, the building, now we wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily have as much parking, but can you place a value on that so that, I mean, some people think it's worth an awful lot of money. And I personally don't think that it is. And, numbers have been tossed around in the past. And I just want people to be able to understand what that value is.
That value, the value of the retaining the property for
No,
field.
no.
So-
Selling that building. How much do you think we could get to sell that building?
So Mason looked at the GIS value of that, but I don't, yes, I just running through it like, I would want to say it was, I don't know what,
15 million, I think it was very high.
15 million, right?
Yeah, so we had it appraised about
Yeah.
3 years back and it came in, I think,
Yeah.
$11 million.
That's
I don't
crazy.
think
I don't think
anybody
any- I
believes
Right.
I don't know
It's
who
not
would
gonna-
buy that, but
it's not gonna happen.
And that's the problem. People out there think that it's worth a lot of money and that we're silly to spend this money on this building where we should take the money and reinvest it into some other piece of property. If you came in to us with $15 million bid in hand, we would seriously consider it, but I don't think that's going to happen.
So Cindy, I
Right.
think you're gonna look at it, the building was probably appraised for 15 million, including the fields, right?
Right.
And the land.
Land
So
value.
that's right here.
once you drastically divide that out, now you gotta go into a special use permit. So let's say a developer comes in there and they buy it and they want to put up, let's just say it's an industrial building. So I'm gonna make industrial, type of R&D facility out of it. This is a big building. It's got a lot of free span. It's got wings that I can put different labs in. Well, that's very, very different type of use than it is now. So now you go into all the special zoning and planning operation and you'd have fields next to it. So you'd have parents coming out and saying, I don't want my kids playing in a field where they're mixing paint or they're making something. So a developer's going to be pretty limited of what they can put because now you've restricted them because you want to keep the fields there. So
You
the,
don't have to convince me.
No,
There's a
no,
lot of people out there that
I'm
think that it's worth a lot of money.
just running it through my mind from
Right.
clients and developers. That's how we're trained to think for that. Like, so then I look at it as, housing, not as much residential loss, but I would again utilize the building structure. That's the most, that's the worth of the building is its structure. It's concrete. It's got amazing, good bones on the building. So you try to maximize that use and kind of minimize the demolition you'd have to do. So again, for that scenario, you could make condos out of it. You could make type of housing, but a lot of housing is market rate housing unless they're forced to do lower cost housing. And for them to get any incentive, they have to make the pro forma work, which is a very tight line. We're trying to do that on 2 developments right now. And the developers are having a hard time because the rents right now are high enough where they can support the high degree of construction. So once now I take and I do 48% of that rent structure for what they call affordable housing, and the number of units I have to do it, now it skews that a lot. So a lot of our development partners are waiting to interest rates go back down because the interest rates are driving a lot of that cost of developing those things. So when the interest rates were 3%, it was a scenario that worked. Now that they're 6%, it's a whole different ballgame. And with that restriction. So they would look at that.
This one's unique too, because you have your plumbing and septic system and leach field remote, right? So you have a distance to go. It makes it even more difficult to make a center.
Yes.
It's just,
So one of the big issues, and I don't think we can sell the building and keep all the fields, these orange radiuses here, if you can see that, those are our protective well radiuses, and you're not supposed to make any changes in those, so, yeah, it's, we couldn't sell the building because the well is in the middle of the fields, and there's a protective radius around the wells as well that they would need to be responsible for, so you could sell sections, maybe a little piece up at the top and a piece down the bottom, but you're looking, $200,000-$300,000 a piece. And there's really no revenue in selling the building or the land. You know, I think you'd have to give the property away for them to just break even tearing down the building with that, you know, that 10 or 12 lots that they get out of it.
So the building itself, I think there's some value, just because steel is so expensive right now, concrete's so expensive and to get those major spans, the greatest thing about, that building is a single loaded corridor. It's got bearing points on either side of the classrooms, so there's no columns in the classrooms.
Yeah.
All that stuff costs a lot of money right now to make.
But is there a use that would want to come down to this area? You know, that's the building, you know, if it was in the Central Fall River or some other place that had water, sewer, you know, and different public utilities, yeah, it's an attractive building, but being here on a septic, public water supply. It places limitations on the use, right? You know, if you wanted to put a restaurant in here, or you wanted to put housing that increased the overall current yield of the wells, you would have to upgrade all those public water supplies, which is not an easy process.
Correct, I believe, Jim, it's, John tells us 10,000 gallons. You would create your own water treatment facility.
Yeah.
They make you do that since it's public, it's not public water, it's well water. So that's a whole nother cost because of this potential use.
You know, and if the current yield is, say, 3,000 gallons per day for the well, and you want to bump it up to 5,000 gallons per day, they will not let you expand the well radius where it is now. You would have to find an undeveloped portion of property that has no fields, no parking, no buildings, in order to get that protected radius to upgrade the yield of the well. So that's something we can check on and see what the existing yields are, because that's important, right? Because that's going to allow you to, or going to dictate how much flow you can take from those wells, and also the septic system has limitations. It should be fairly substantial based on it being a school, but you know, you're not going to be able to increase it over 10,000 gallons per day. And if the yield is limited already, you're going to be limited as to what you can do.
I guess the biggest scenario that would be the age of the septic, right? You're right, that the thing is designed for multiple toilets for the size of kids that were in there. How old is that aging system, and how long is it going to last before you have to replace it? And then what do you replace it with? And what are the requirements for that? So I think it's a great point you guys brought up. And what I think what we should do is put that in the beginning of the presentation. So as to say to the public, look, we've already looked at this, as to say, okay, if we do absolutely nothing, we sell it, what value does it potentially pose out there? And what are the detriments to stop us from getting maximum value back out of that site if we try to sell it? And if it is, it is. You just put it up there. If it's a scenario, if the town elects to do it, they do it and go with it. But if not, maybe here are some alternatives utilizing that existing. Like I think.
Yeah, I think that would be very, very helpful, because I think people just need to understand what that value is, whatever it may be, to disposing of the property or not doing anything with it, that comes at a tremendous cost of its own. So I think that would be very helpful.
Okay.
And I would expect early on a discussion of using it as is, the limitations of it. Because that's where people are going to go quickly. Can't we just shove some people in there?
No, Ed, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna have one of my guys do an existing condition code review on the building.
Okay.
So that's gonna tell us, okay, I've got the Council on Aging that wants to go in there. I've got after school care, and I've got recreation. Okay, what do I gotta do code wise to make this thing work in the new Massachusetts building code, 2025? What does it have to do? And then what are those? And then I'll give that back to my estimator, and he'll put a price on those things. And we'll factor that in. So when that question comes up, we'll have data to back it up. Good point.
Okay. Isn't after school an educational use and therefore doesn't need updates?
Whether or not you can see when you go into it, yes, it is at the school, and yes, it's educational, yes, it exists now. But now I'm using mixed use, because I'm now throwing a business use on the other end. And what does that do to the building? When you have a mixed use, right now it's all educational use. As soon as I throw business in there, now I got a mixed use.
And what's the business?
That would be the senior center. Or the council on aging. I keep going to senior center. I apologize. Council on aging is a business use.
Yeah.
So it's,
And if we did town hall annex, or we did
that'd be a business.
town hall, it's all business,
So
right?
most of the times, Ed, when you have mixed use on a bigger property like that, they'll have ratings, fire ratings, separation of the two type of uses.
The most restrictive.
What I want to know from a code standpoint, I don't want to shoot from my hip here tonight. I want to do the research. So at least we have it behind us. Is, are there any, let's say, historical or existing code provisions for this exact type of scenario in the code book? And there are, in New England, there's several states that have those. I believe Massachusetts has it as well.
Amendments to historic,
Historic, well,
Restaurant,
historic
reuse.
restoration,
Yeah.
reuse, refurbish.
that's Rhode Island.
Rhode Island has one, Connecticut has one, and I believe Mass does have one.
There are exceptions, as long as those exceptions are accepted by the AHJ, which would be fire marshal or building commissioner. So in your town.
Right. So we'll do it quick. I mean, that's a day search. It's not a big thing, but we can throw back to you guys, next time we meet. We'll have that one. And I think that's good.
Yeah.
So that would go towards the front of the presentation again. That existing, we'll do a whole segment on the existing building, just putting people in there now, what effect it has.
Yeah, basically, what conditions drive a change of use, which then throws you into code improvements.
So what would be helpful as well is a breakdown on your estimates. Like, I know the auditorium is beautiful, it'd be a great facility, but what is the cost to bring that up to code and to rehabilitate that portion of the building? You know, if that's gonna be a $15-20 million upgrade, numbers, it's higher than I'm sure it is, but if it is the value there for the town to do it? Or should we, you know, one thing that we've looked at in the past is the south side of the building where the gym is an add-on, right? To the original 1960s, 70 building. You know, if we took everything north of the old, just that addition portion, wiped out everything, kept that for recreation, gym, you have classrooms upstairs, you have a small gym downstairs that can be used for council on aging. You have some big locker rooms there that could be converted into council on aging space. That would satisfy that. Maybe you add addition to that or you keep some of the classrooms next to it for the after-school program, or you add an addition to it, but is there value in doing something like that? What is the value to keeping the auditorium in some of these other spaces? You know, if it's,
So a breakdown of those major elements now.
yes, I think that would be helpful.
So when John did this estimate, did he break down the areas or he just did general area? I believe he just did general area. So I'll ask him.
General area is what we didn't break into programmatic, not,
Okay, so we'll
and same with here for each building. Yeah, so
okay, so it's easy enough though. We have the ballpark, it's a square foot area. And we know the condition exists, so we can segment that in that. Okay, that's a great point.
And then I think as the committee goes forward, whatever the committee decides to recommend, I think we need a fallback option, right? So if we go to town meeting and we propose, or we go to voters and we propose A, B, or C, or whatever, and that does not get approved, what is plan B? Right? Is it just to keep going as we are right now for as long as we can, or is it, do we put out there that it's gonna cost us $3.5-4 million to tear it down? We need a plan B.
And you've been saying that for a little while, Jim, so my apologies for not having it on here.
Oh, that's all right.
Plan B was the annex added to the town hall.
Yeah.
That's the
But
hall.
what Jim is saying though is if, say the town says, oh, these are great scenarios, but we're not affording anything. Let's do nothing. Well, what does that cost? absolutely nothing to do. So you're gonna shut down that school, take it down, that costs something. Who's paying for that?
Yeah, I think,
It's $3 million to tear it down, take it away.
yeah, and I think it's fair to say that, you know, if we try to continue as we're going, we may get 5 to 10 years out of it, but, there's a good possibility that we're gonna have to put some serious money into it. Whether it's a heating system, whether it's the well, whether it's a septic system, within the next 1 to 10 years. And then it's gonna come on us fast, right? You know, it's one of those things that's just gonna go.
That's what you have up there in the 0 to 5, 1 to 10, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's perfect. You can show them what happens if you try to
Yeah.
keep it open, that's what your cost, but how much if you don't keep it open, lock the doors and
Yeah,
say.
oh, that's only, not gonna get better. Yeah, tear it down at X dollars a square foot.
I can't imagine a tear down scenario. I think it's a do as little as possible scenario, because you got 400 kids playing basketball in there. You got 103 after school. You got school administration, you got council on aging, heading in there.
But I think what's going on in the town is they've been anticipating doing what we're doing now, right? They're waiting for the information to come out. And they're saying, we'll put a Band-Aid on it, and for now, we'll just use this space. And I agree with you, Ed. This is great space that the town is actually enjoying and using on a day-by-day basis. But like Jim just alluded to, there will be a point in time when that roof starts leaking, and there's gonna be a big bill. Because, you know, you're looking, we just did this tonight, at 155,000 and 28,000 foot to replace the roof. It's $4 million just to replace the roof, where it's $3.5 million to take the building down. So that's gonna happen sooner than later. I'd say 1 to 5 years. You had a new roof on there, if I remember correctly.
Some sections, not all.
So you may say you get hit with $1 million, $1.25 million. It's still something that you don't account for, something that happens that you have to react. And I'm sure that the town doesn't have $1.5 million in play just in case something like that happens. So you should be aware of that. So you're right. You should educate them to say, hey, you've been using the building. You know, it's like an older car that just keeps running on you until one day it just dies. And you're using it. And one day when it dies, it's going to come. We all know it's going to come, but it's going to come when you least expect it and need it the most.
But I think Ed brings a good point too. You know, the gym's getting used. We do have a small after school program, which could move to one of the existing schools. It's not ideal, but it could. And the council on aging definitely needs space. Town hall aside, something needs to be done with these buildings, whether it's 1 year or 10 years from now, it's going to have to be addressed. But if we did something, is there something minimal we can do there to maybe keep the gym? You know, instead of an $80 million project, we have a $15 million project, but we have a new community center there. The council on aging has enough space, maybe
Right.
a couple of classrooms. Yeah, listen, ideally, the auditorium is beautiful and some of this other space is great too, but can we afford to keep it? And will it get the use to justify the expense?
So maybe a scenario where you keep the gym, you blow away the rest of the school, and you build a community area where the council on aging goes. Where you
Yeah,
keep,
and I think if you look at that gym addition, there is space in there between the locker rooms, the small gym in the basement.
Yeah, that's,
There may be sufficient space in there for, not ideal for council on aging, but enough. In the gym, there's no reason why they can't use the gym during the day, right?
yeah, we lose the elevator, we need stairs. I mean, there's gonna be costs involved in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
You know, a whole new heating system, HVAC, you know, fire protection. No
Right.
matter what you do there, it's gonna be.
Right.
for that scenario. So
Yeah, I think you're right, Jim. We need a least cost alternative. And it'll end up with be a minimal program, but it'll be at least cost.
Okay, I got it. So least cost scenario, like if you had to do this yourself,
Yes.
right? You can't say, hey, what
Wait,
really
it
sound?
really comes down to what program you really want to keep.
Well,
Yeah.
you try to keep the gym, try to keep the
I
after
get it.
school and
Council on Aging needs more space, the school needs some space. The rec department needs some space. And then we'll others vote just for those.
Well, because as Jim mentioned, I mean, these are all programs that we're currently doing. So if we obliterated the whole building, we would lose all of these programs. So, that's once again an important point to drive home, that we can't just knock the building down and walk away from it, because it's going to impact so many things that are already being used as a resource. The building is already being used as a resource for. So, not everyone understands that, because it's pretty invisible.
A lot of people think it's empty.
Right, exactly. So I think that,
Should be.
making sure that it's clear that there are hundreds of people, hundreds of families that get use out of that building, whether it be very young, very old, in between. Lots of different walks of life of the community currently use that building.
Well,
Maybe it's not just the gym. Maybe it's the gym in the classroom.
yeah, well, actually, the community, that's exactly, everyone that spoke up said, we don't want to lose it, we want to keep it. And we want to expand it, and we want to use it more effectively. So I didn't hear anyone say we want to limit its use or take those things away. Definitely, they didn't want that.
No, but
Yeah, but we didn't put a dollar amount to it, right? I mean, over the last 3 years, I've been through a debt exclusion on water sewer. I've been through an override on Proposition 2.5. And we got slammed.
Right.
no one.
Yeah.
You gotta God, it's nothing.
Everybody wants it if it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, everything they try. So he said, yeah, I mean, it's a great question, right? So if they don't want to spend any, what's the minimum you can do to maintain what you have?
Okay.
Right? And that may include taking down some of that building and capping it off, and just keeping the programs the way they are. It's a different thought.
Yeah, I mean, I personally do not see the town being a landlord and leasing out portions to businesses and stuff. It's just,
Yeah.
we don't have that capacity or expertise here in town to do that. And
You know-
you need a management company to do that. Who's going to accept the calls when something goes wrong? It's just,
Well, who would take over control of that? Even the minimal, if we school it back and square it up and chop it down, who's in control of that?
it's a good question, right? My guess is it would probably be the town side.
You don't think the school gym would take after school and rec?
See, the after school is a private program from what I understand. They pay a small stipend to the community schools to use the facility. But that's Chris may have more information on that.
And council on aging, if they're in there, yeah, again, you could downsize and you could pare it back, and get the lowest cost, say, option.
Well, that's scenario 3, when we cut it back.
It's gonna need even more, and then it still will need
Take the
care and
auditorium.
control, yeah, all that goes away, the kitchen, the auditorium, the garage, the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it,
Minimum-
brush of a pencil, you can tear it away, it's just, what really goes in there, and then it comes up.
I think it's a great idea, because if anything else, you look at it.
Yeah, and that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, and if the town says, hey, we can't afford, like, they don't want to pass anything else, we can't afford it, but we can afford that one, something's better than nothing, that's what you got.
So may I ask a question? Talking about all these different scenarios, fallback scenarios, et cetera, at what point are we making a recommendation, or is the committee making a recommendation to the select board? And at what point is this feedback from community members expected? Like, is that community meeting post recommendation to select board, or is that to inform the recommendation to select board? Or are we also like anticipating like the feedback at the town meeting or special town meeting? Like, I'm just a little curious. I think I wasn't following why we need at what point are we engaging the community where we're going to need this fallback and engage them this deeply about like the choices?
If I could answer, then I'm sure Chris or Jim would be able to answer the first part of the question, but I would say why you want public feedback is you want that momentum. So if the selectmen do want one of these scenarios, that people are advised about it, And any questions, that's the form we want to ask. And
So-
then we've done the research to back it up. We're not just throwing out hey, we just want you to pass this bond and good luck. You know,
So it's before the recommendation, sorry, right?
Yeah, that's
That's
the
what you're saying.
intent. You get people alive. You know,
Yeah.
that last meeting we had, people were alive. They were looking
Yeah.
at, they were giving their comments.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of work since then to
Yeah.
now, more numbers and, so I would be interested to find out what they think.
Yes.
Jim just alluded to three questions that they all rejected.
Right.
If they see this in front of them and they see the cost benefit analysis, and they say, boy, what we haven't factored yet that we'll work with Jim on is the actual taxpayer issue. Like,
Yeah.
what does $60 million mean for the average taxpayer per year?
Mhm, mhm.
Right? What is 20 million? What is 5 million? What is 30 million? Then they're going to start seeing dollars versus use. And depending on what family it is, I've got kids in school, I could use that. I don't have any kids, but me and my wife could use that. Or I'm single, I could use that. And that's what you try to placate is all those parties so you get everyone interested in the whole town into voting for this and in favor of this. And then I would also say you want that selectman at that meeting so they see it as well. So they're not making a decision in a vacuum.
That's a great idea.
And sorry, Craig's muted, but is it Mr. Dutra? He's a selectman, correct?
Yes.
So he would know the process. I think that,
I think he just kind of texted all of us on the email saying that he can't participate, but he can hear us all. He's on his car's Bluetooth, I think. Yeah.
Chris, I don't know if you want to answer Dee's first question she had about
yeah.
what your vision was the initial process.
And I'm asking because I do have some thoughts on the community event, so I'd love like 10 minutes if we could touch base on that before we all head out.
Yeah, sure.
So briefly, I guess the biggest thought that I have when considering what Jim's calling a least cost option, I think it's important to have that as part of the cost benefit analysis, certainly. But I think ultimately what at least I kind of envision is this committee making a recommendation to the select board to bring a question to, I'm thinking more and more a special town meeting would be the appropriate venue to bring this question. But I think that the option should be presented, the least cost option should be presented more in terms of making a comparison as opposed to an option that would want I guess that we want to put towards a town meeting. You get what I'm saying? Like I really think it's actually crucial that we present a single scenario by the time we get to that point, just with the data to back up why it makes sense. But I guess the question is where is it appropriate to talk about that right now, or is that should it be part of the study, or is that like the next phase after the study is completed? So, I mean, I go back and forth on how detailed you want to be as far as the options go. I mean, I will tell you, based on what I've seen, what I saw previously and what I've seen today, and just the general, I guess between the cost and the flexibility, I would be leaning most towards presenting the community campus type option to the town at large, so to speak. So I think
Yeah.
what I worry about with presenting a least cost option is it's almost considered like an automatic default to that option.
It makes it too easy.
He makes it too easy. Exactly. So
Well-
that's really my concern. I think the data is necessary, but not necessarily as a,
Well,
I think it's going to be better by the time we get to the town if we're presenting them with here's an up or down option, and if that, I think a fallback option really shouldn't be presented at the same time. That's kind of how I think. Because I
Well, Chris, I only bring it up just so that we are prepared with that information should it be asked? I mean, we would really, I think, look very inadequate if someone were to pose the question and we were like, well, we didn't even look at that, or we don't know what that is. And then it would look like we really didn't do a thorough job. And I think that it's important that we all have that information in front of us, regardless, we can determine whether or not it's brought out, as an entree of choices. But I think at least this committee needs to have that information.
And I absolutely agree 100%. That's,
Yeah.
it's crucial for the comparison. It just, I think we need to have two separate discussions as to, what we're doing, what we're creating in terms of data and what we're creating in terms of actually presenting to the town, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. I don't think you want to present more than one option at town meeting at the ballot.
So may I say, so town meeting,
It
I
should-
think one option, and then Craig just said he envisioned the community meeting as being like a facilitated discussion of the options, maybe moderated. So is that accurate to what everyone else is thinking? Maybe options, the three options facilitated at a community meeting with the fallback prepared for those questions, and then recommending one option with a fallback to select board and one option at special town meeting?
I'm kind of even thinking for the next community meeting, would it be appropriate to focus in on one option? And along with the data too, the least costs and everything, basically having something to compare it to. But I think even in terms of the public meeting at this point, maybe it's best to focus in. But I do think that it's going to require, I will, as we're kind of an informal session here, I would like to have a full committee meeting and, actually have a vote on that procedure before, before we get to the public meeting. So hopefully maybe we can try to reconvene something, pretty quick in the next couple of weeks. Cause I know that, DA, you had mentioned specifically getting the public meeting on discussing the options for the public meeting. And I think it's important that we have at least a fuller committee to discuss that for sure. But
I think that makes sense, that the community meeting being one option and that the quorum votes next internal meeting on what that option is. Because I was thinking, when is the community going to vote on which option they like, So I personally agree with that. And I would still like to discuss it later, but I didn't have anything like that the quorum would need to vote on. I just wanted to pitch to you guys like how I wanted to engage the community. So when we're done with this part of the discussion, I'm going to hold you guys quickly to that. So continue.
So what I'm hearing is that we'll have one more meeting with this group and then we'll have a public meeting?
You need a committee meeting, not a community meeting.
Yeah, committee.
Yeah.
And then a community and then you make recommendations.
To the selectmen.
that I think is where we're at right now. Just I would feel comfortable having, would want to have a little bit more participation before we have another public meeting from the committee.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we just didn't have full rank here today. So
Yeah.
When should we have our next committee meeting? Because summer's going by fast, and I feel like it would be nice if the next community meeting also happened in summer, considering the first one was in April.
Mhm.
So let's find a time that works for everybody to meet.
I agree. Next week is going to be, I think it's tough in general, vacation wise, but certainly,
Yes.
the second week of July. And I think we can make it for, certainly make it for a 5 o'clock or 5:30.
I think 5 or 5:30 would be better. Some folks were like, 4 is like a little too tight. So yeah, maybe we can, yeah,
You're thinking that I'm looking at my calendar, Wednesday the 9th?
I'm down.
I'm here, July.
Wednesday, let's see, is
You are
that, do we have, oh yeah, that's right. That's our 7:38. So yes, school, I've got a school committee meeting at 7:30 in the morning. So would certainly be able to do Wednesday evening, the 9th.
I can do Wednesday evenings.
Yes.
All right,
good.
so let's,
Maybe we do a hybrid meeting too, so I know some people want to participate in person.
Sure.
yeah, we
I
can do
can schedule
hybrid,
that.
hybrid for sure.
Do you guys want it in the select board's meeting room
Yeah, it's all set up for hybrid, so.
Perfect.
And I
yeah.
think you know, if you all, RGB folks, if you're able to be there in person, that's great. If not, I think that's okay as well. If you need to participate virtually for that particular one.
Yeah, I think in person is better.
If you're available, I would certainly want you guys to be there for sure. So
We said 5:30 on the 9th, right?
let's go with 5:30. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll set that up. Okay.
And Dia, when do you want to do a public meeting? When you want to throw some dates out right now?
Should we? Okay. I mean, maybe I feel like that 3rd or 4th week of July, maybe top of August. I want all of us to feel like we're a team, we're ready to handle it. So I don't know what you guys are thinking for timeline, because I wanted to make it a little more engaging. Like I just attended like a bunch of conferences basically, and they're like, when there's something tangible, it really sets it in. So I wanted to like print out some maps and maybe some of the design you guys have shown here. So all that to say is, thinking of my own preparation, it would be nice to have at least 2 weeks from our Wednesday the 9th meeting to be able to get the word out and stuff. So I would love like the last week of July, top week of August. I don't know
Yeah.
what you guys think about that.
Yeah, they said it wasn't long enough. Remember, we gave them 2 weeks?
We know.
People come up afterwards saying, I just found out about it today. Actually, John called me and said, I just saw it when I passed it on the interstate today. What's going on? I'm like,
Oh,
So we have 3 weeks.
They want longer.
3 weeks from the 9th will be the 30th.
yeah.
oh, Craig is not available on the 9th for the meeting. Okay.
Okay.
How is the 8th or the 10th?
10th is not good for me, the 8th I could do it.
8th? How's the 8th for everyone?
I can make the 8th work. Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
I can do the 8th.
Excellent.
And as far as the public meeting, I mean, I would be open to either the week of the 28th, that's the Monday, or the 4th. Either one of those weeks would work.
I'll just say that I'm on vacation from August 1st through 4th, so I can do week of the 4th, just not Monday. But week of the 4th sounds good to me.
I think in August, I think doing it at the top of August would probably be.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a good look.
So
I know the
why don't
5th
we-
is
why
like
don't we-
public safety day. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Why don't we tentatively set it up for the 6th of August?
Hmm.
We can confirm that at our next meeting. Or your
Hmm.
next meeting.
8 cents for my phone. Craig just said he could do 4. Whoop.
I'd like, yeah, if we can set it up for the 6th.
Okay.
When you on
I
vacation?
think that's, yeah, that Wednesday would probably be.
You don't have any calendar?
that'd be good.
Can't get them.
I would say either at select board's office, which might be small if we have decent public, or at the new school, the auditorium.
Could we do the new school's cafe or the old school cafeteria or new school cafeteria somewhere where people can
I'd stay out of the old school. You
Okay,
got a
you'll
hot
stay out of
day,
the
it's
old
gonna be- Yeah.
ooh, okay.
The
Um,
heat, yeah, I think it needs to be an auditorium, and if we're limited to the new school, then that'll work. I do think for the purposes of not only getting the engagement, but just for kind of almost a more formal setting than the last time, I do think an auditorium is important.
Oh, you want more formal? Okay.
Well, not maybe not in terms of. Well, yeah, I guess I do a little bit more just in terms of being able to kind of control the crowd dynamics a little bit better. I think an auditorium makes a little bit more sense, and we can do some orderly rows for comments and stuff like that.
May I pitch something? And you guys are free to just be like, this is not it. This is not the vibe. I wanted to RGB your the option 3 community campus / option 2. I feel like this committee is going to decide. It might potentially decide 1 or 2, whichever option it is. I wanted to print out like the floor plan you guys have and maybe have just some markers so people can like basically it was like community engagement. It's really effective when people can participate in more than just sitting and listening, like lecture. So I was thinking we could avoid like a lecture type vibe for this community meeting, and people could like follow along with the presentation, maybe spend 5 minutes drawing in or coloring in what they would like to see in their community campus, sharing with the neighbor, and then moving into a more robust discussion of what this option looks like and covering why we can't / shouldn't sell, why we can't move in now, and the existing conditions, code review, and cost of doing nothing. Oops, sorry. So what are folks' thoughts on that? Does that sound like too much out of control? Like I was going to walk around and see what people were doing just to get, break the tension a little bit and have somebody talk to their neighbor and be able to, physically hold the diagram and be like, okay, yeah, I get it. If we think that's like kind of ridiculous,
I like it.
that's fine too.
I like it. I am worried about. I'm actually worried about the turnout over if we end up with overwhelming numbers that could get messy quickly.
Could get messy. Not the worst problem with too many folks.
So Dee, what we've done in the past is we could just put some of the floor plans or a couple of the site plans on easels up in the back with Post-it notes or markers, and they can write on that as they walk in or if they want to
Yes.
walk around. And
Yes, I love that.
make those comments.
But just to go back to Dia's point, and back to Chris's point, I guess, is, okay, let's say you have a scenario where you have an auditorium full of people. You present 3 or 4 options. Are you looking for that crowd to pick an option, or are we going to go there with a determination of what option, the direction the committee would want to go with? There's a danger of, you could divide that auditorium in 4 different parts, and it could be equal 4 different, and you don't know where you're going at that point. Or do you push it a certain way that the committee has decided to go? What do you guys see? Is it better? Because ultimately it's the selectmen who take that information and run with it, and ultimately everyone votes on it.
I am certainly a proponent for having an option in mind.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think we should present what we're recommending to the select board to the folks at the community meeting, and then the next time we see those folks should be at special town meeting for them to vote. Is my opinion.
That's definitely where I'm going as well.
Okay.
Do you present it as this is the preferred option, but we looked at A, B, and C? Or do you just present D?
I think A, B, and C need to be there as almost
Reasons for picking D?
reasons to pick. Yeah, reasons that we decided to go with this option.
Okay.
And to establish that we were thorough, that we looked at all these alternatives.
Mhm.
And then maybe the people in the audience stand up and say, hey, this is a great idea, but I like the other option, or I like, just gives them opportunity to speak. And
Yeah, I think by having,
they can participate.
yeah, I think that by presenting it as this is what the committee's recommended based on what we've gone through, but here also we want to make sure that we give you all the information that we've had
Exactly.
and let it, I guess let the meeting flow a little organically based on that, I think would be a good way to approach it.
So when we look at the cost too, we should have, we're going to present what it would, like a debt exclusion would cost per taxpayer on the average home. If we're looking at about $60 million, that's what the school was. At the time, that was about $425, $450, I think, for an average single family house. Now, the value of the average single family house has gone up probably about 20% since then. And instead of getting a 2 or 2.5% interest rate, we're probably 4.5 to 5.5%. So we're probably looking for the average single family home anywhere from $650 to $800 for $60 million. But we can get a definite number based on $1 million or $10 million, and we can have that information if somebody asks.
That'd be real helpful, because.
Yep. I will get that this week.
All right. Okay.
All right.
All right, I think we've got our marching orders, right? It's all set.
So Tuesday the 8th, 5:30 p.m. hybrid.
That will be, yes, hybrid meeting for the committee.
Sounds good.
I'll go from there.
And on the agenda deal, we'll go over this one, kind of touch base where we were.
Mhm.
Then we should talk about the public meeting,
That would be great. Yes.
what we need to do to get people, put it on the agenda anyway, so we can talk about it.
Sounds good. I'll put it on the agenda. I'll tell Chris too. Yep.
Perfect.
All right.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Take care,
All right.
everyone. See you in a couple weeks.
All right, sounds good. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
You will.